Hello, hello. Good evening, everyone out there on Facebook. My name is Paul Carganilla. I'm the Community Affairs Manager for the Oxnard Police Department, and we are coming at you live from the Oxnard Police Department in beautiful downtown Oxnard. And this evening, for this week's live Q&A with an employee here at the police department, we have the pleasure of having with us Sergeant Scott Aaron. He's a sergeant in the Family Protection Unit here at the department. So we're going to talk to him a little bit about his career and what his role is in the department. And then we are going to finish by taking any questions that you have out there. So as you are watching live on Facebook this evening, if you have any questions for Sergeant Aaron about the Family Protection Unit, what they do, or anything about anything that they cover, we're here to answer that, and we just we'll get to those before the end of this live Q&A here this evening. We might not answer them immediately after you ask them, so just please be patient with us, and we'll try and get through as many questions as are presented here during this time. But first and foremost, welcome, Sergeant Aaron. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Paul.
Oh, man, it is a pleasure. So tell us, I like to start at the very beginning. At what age, what in your life inspired you to want to become a police officer?
Yeah, as a young kid growing up, I always thought it would be fun to do something different every day, to do something that's not boring or mundane. So law enforcement looked like it would be fun. It would do something different every day, and essentially that's what it is turned out to be: is something different every day. No matter what's going on, what my assignment's been. There's always something to learn, always something new coming my way.
And where was it that you grew up?
I grew up in Santa Monica, graduated from Santa Monica High School.
When did you arrive here in Oxnard?
I arrived here in Oxnard. I spent some time back east while I was in the military, and I ended up moving out here to California shortly after my son was born in 2002. And eventually I caught on here with the Oxnard Police Department. I've been here about a little over 15 years at this point.
Wow. What branch of the military did you serve in?
I served in the Marines. I was in the infantry, 0311.
So I know that a lot of police officers did come from the military. Did you, as you came out of your service with the Marines, was this at the forefront of your mind career wise, or were there other things that you were considering?
No, this is pretty much at the forefront. It's what I had decided that I wanted to do. When I went in the military, I was only 17, and I really couldn't do anything law enforcement related while I was in the military. So by the time I got out of the military, I was in a position where I could further my career goals in becoming a law enforcement officer.
Wow. And you said it's about 15 years. I'm sorry, did you say?
I've been with the Oxnard Police Department about 15 years. Yeah.
Were you with any police departments before?
Yeah, I started my law enforcement career in Virginia, and then I did a brief stint with the Ventura Police Department.
Very cool. Um, how long have you been a sergeant?
I've been a sergeant a little over 3 years now. December 2017 is when I was promoted.
And can you tell us about all the different assignments you've had in your 15 years here?
Yeah, I've been obviously when you first start off as a police officer, you start off as a patrolman. From there, I moved on to a field training officer, and eventually became a traffic motor officer. And during my time riding the motorcycle, I moved into some of the investigative. I started gaining some of the investigative skills that I have today in doing collision investigations, whether it be some of the fatals or the serious injury collisions. And I started doing that. And from there, I then promoted to senior officer became a district B coordinator up in the collections area when the collections first opened up. And then I found a spot in the Family Protection Unit as a senior detective, starting out in domestic violence, and then moving over into the sexual assault. In December of 2017 is when I picked up sergeant. I went back to patrol, spent some time down there before a spot opened up for a supervisor spot in our major crimes unit, who investigates suspicious deaths and homicides. I went there for just about a year and a half before the spot opened up here in the Family Protection Unit, which is where I wanted to ultimately come back to.
And what has been, so if this is where you ultimately wanted to come back to, has this been your favorite assignment, this unit?
I've had a lot of fun here. A lot of challenging cases, but a lot of rewarding cases. So this is why I felt like I was doing the most good was in this assignment, dealing with survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault, as well as child abuse.
All right. Well, that is definitely a heavy subject, domestic assaults and child abuse. Um, and so it is a difficult thing to talk about, and I'm sure a lot of people don't want to ask specific questions here on Facebook uh, relating to these issues. But if you do have a question for Sergeant Aaron that you think could be handled correctly in a public forum like this, and that maybe other people would find value in hearing the answers to, feel free to type them in the comments here on the live video. As I mentioned, we are going till about 6 p.m. tonight, so uh, we have this much time to answer those questions for you, and we'd love to do that. And just before we get into those, let's just talk briefly about give us a general overall view of the Family Protection Unit.
Okay, so the Family Protection Unit is the Oxnard Police Department's always had investigators for domestic violence, sexual assault, child abuse, and elder abuse. But in 2011, these different disciplines were combined into one unit. So the unit is comprised of 4 sexual assault investigators who also investigate child abuse, elder abuse. You have 2 domestic violence investigators, along with 2 civilian employees. One who does missing persons, she's a specialist, as well as the sex offender registrant specialist, who keeps track of and registers the sex offenders in the city of Oxnard, as well as some of the surrounding areas, because they do tend to cross over city boundaries.
And is this all handled at the police station downtown?
As far as
all of the different aspects of the Family Protection Unit, or is there a different building that we work out of? Or?
I see what you're saying. Okay, so yes, we have our own wing in the station. It's kind of set away. The detectives a few years ago kind of pooled our resources. We also tapped into members of our community, like Ivan Chacon from Truth Realty, retired Assistant Chief Chuck Hookstra and his wife Cindy, retired Sergeant Ken Klopman and his daughter Sammy assisted with painting the child area. Retired Ventura Police Department motor officer Rod Giles assisted with putting this area together. So as you can kind of see behind me, this is the kind of the play area. So when children are brought down here to be interviewed, or parents come here and they bring their children, we can have them here, and they're not sitting in a boring police station. And this is also out of the way of the general operations of the station. So things are quieter over here, and survivors of trauma can focus on what they're trying to tell detectives. The children can be can entertain themselves essentially while we're doing those interviews, and sometimes it helps us break the ice with them.
Yeah, and walked around with a camera a little bit earlier, and as I play that video, can you I mean, you just described the whole area, but just tell us what we're seeing.
All right. So this is the play area. We got stuffed animals and paintings on the wall. This giant dollhouse was donated by the Commander Giles. She brought that in. Chalkboard, more stuffed animals, more spaces for toys. The handprints on the wall are the children that have come through the different children that have come through the area. But we just try to keep it engaging and make it a place that looks fun place to be. This is the waiting area where we can have families wait depending on what's going on and who's being interviewed and so forth. But they can wait in there, and in there we have a large television that was donated, along with DVDs and so forth, to keep everybody to kind of keep their mind off of it, or kind of keep the anxiety level down,
Sure.
as things are going on.
Yeah, just imagine what a traumatizing time it is in their lives, and then just to have memories of the police station.
Mhm.
Um, just having that area that kind of looks like school or a daycare center. It's got to be make the whole experience just so much easier to deal with and to cope with. I would think so. That's really awesome. So many thanks to everyone who helped create that area or donated to that wing, the family protection wing here at the station. It's really cool. Um, so let's just talk briefly about, like, if someone is a victim of sexual assault. Obviously it's a hard thing to talk about, and it's a hard thing to call the police and say, hey, I'm experiencing this, or to even tell a family member. I know for, like, family members, it's hard to even call the police, and because there's so many questions, there's so many emotional ties to it. It's not like just being the victim of a crime on the street, like somebody steals your purse or breaks into your car. Like, it's way more personal. So if someone is dealing with this in their lives, like, what would be the steps of reporting it, and how would they what would the best way to report it be?
The best way to report it would be to call us, as the sooner the better. But call the Oxnard Police Department, and that's what starts the ball rolling. Call the dispatch center, and a patrol officer will go out there to wherever you are. They'll get some initial information to help us determine what we have. And then based on the case, if it's a sexual assault type case, and it's within generally 120 hours, that's about the furthest out that we can go. Anything older than 120 hours, there's really not a whole lot of like evidence, like bodily fluids, that can be recovered.
Why is that?
It just because it deteriorates over time, and depending on where the fluid is, can get washed away, can get brushed off, things like that. It just the evidence starts disappearing almost immediately, and about 120 hours out is, or after the assault, is generally when we've lost it at that point. There have been cases where we've gotten it. It just depends on the circumstances, the facts of the assault. So the sooner that it gets reported to us, the faster we can move. Some of the don'ts, the do's and don'ts, if you will, is, unless you are in need of medical attention, the hospitals, if you go to a hospital, you're going to end up sitting in the waiting room. You're eventually going to report that some kind of sexual assault happened to them. Well, they're going to stop. They're not going to do the exam there at the hospital. They're going to end up calling us. We're going to come out. All it does is just delay. So unless you need immediate medical assistance for, like, open wounds and stuff like that, if it's just for a sexual assault exam, call us first. We'll come out there. We'll get the ball rolling, and it'll be a faster process than going through the hospital. And the hospital's not going to do the exam. Don't shower. I don't go to the bathroom. Try to either leave your clothes on or put them in a paper bag, and we'll collect that as part of the evidence. If there's some kind of assault that involves the mouth, we don't eat or drink. There could be evidence in there that we can potentially get. So, but once that report is started, we will end up going to what we call safe harbor. It's an offsite location. There's two of them. There's one in Simi Valley. There's one in the city of Ventura, where we would conduct the interviews, and a sexual assault nurse examiner will also respond and do the exam, um, depending on what's involved. Conduct the exam. We will also do what's called a forensic interview. All my detectives in the Family Protection Unit are specially trained to conduct these kinds of investigations, as well as talk to children. And when we will do what's called forensic interviews, it's just one person talking to the survivor, and it's generally on camera, and there's a lot of stakeholders that are watching as well, so we can do the interview one time, talk to the survivor of the abuse or assault, and then we can get everything out and just do one interview, which as we do the least number of interviews possible, to lessen the re-victimization, if you will, of doing interviews over and over and over again, which would end up happening if we didn't all get together and do it as one team.
Yeah. There's just so much involved that you don't even think about, and like even just talking about it like on Facebook feels like, oh, this is uncomfortable, but it's you're bringing up amazing points that like I wouldn't like I've never thought of before. And I'm sure like right after someone is a victim, you're not thinking like my first instinct would be shower. My first instinct
Mhm.
would be just like get this like get myself clean, get this off of me. But it's just such a different mindset when you're thinking about it from the standpoint of bringing justice to the situation and having evidence that you can take to court. And so it is really great information for people to hear, even though it is uncomfortable and nobody ever wants to be in that situation, and nobody is ever like can predict it or wants to put themselves in that situation. But if you do find yourself in that situation, these are great tips. Thank you. So just sexual assault is just part of what you handle, though, right? You've mentioned like child abuse, elder abuse. The family protection unit really has an umbrella over all of these things, right?
That is correct.
Um, how many cases would you say come through? Like, I guess a better question for like that I'm curious about is like could you describe like what you do day to day, week to week when there's not someone in the station actively being interviewed?
It's working the cases. We have a lot of cases come through our office. If it's not survivors coming in off the street to report, we also handle the cross reporting from Children and Family Services. Anything that gets reported to them, anything that our officers come in contact with also has to report to them. Anything from therapists or any of the mandated reporters in the state of California has to report to Children and Family Services if there's any kind of suspected child abuse. Well, that stuff comes to us as well. So there's this cross reporting, there's this two-way flow of information between Children and Family Services and ourselves to report. So if there's nothing actively happening, there's no shortage of cases, whether it's child abuse, elder abuse is the same way. If we're not actively dealing with an elder abuse case, we're getting referrals from the Human Services Agency in Ventura County with the cross reports for elder abuse as well. Once again, from the mandated reporters. So there's no shortage, and then there's following up on the cases. that we have to do. If a case doesn't fall within that 120 hours, we still have to try to do the best we can to prove that case. And there's several investigative techniques we can use to try to prove a case, even if it happens to be outside the 120 hours.
And you had great advice for anyone who's a victim of sexual assault. What kind of advice or tips, or what would you say to someone who is maybe experiencing or is suspecting child abuse, either in the home or someone they know or a family member?
Once again, report it as soon as possible. The sooner we were able to start the investigation, the better. Like I said, sometimes, with child abuse cases, bruises disappear, and once they're gone, that's our best evidence is whatever physical injuries that we see, or whatever physical injuries you see. So call us up, have us come respond, and we'll take the report, take the photographs, and then we can move on with the investigation from there.
It seems like, based on talking about the different centers in Simi Valley and in the city of Ventura, it feels like your unit in particular really works well with and hand in hand with so many different, not just law enforcement agencies, but different organizations within the community.
Yeah, we've set up the Family Justice Center. Is something new that's in Ventura. It's off of Loma Vista, and they offer services, outreach to other agencies like Child Support, Coalition for Family Harmony, Interface, Children and Family Services, Human Trafficking Task Force, and it opens up services to people that don't know what to do. So even though they've been a survivor of some kind of trauma, we can get them hooked up with services. And studies have shown that the sooner we get them hooked up for services, the sooner we can kind of start the healing process for everything that's happened.
And you provided me this card a little earlier today. Can you tell me a little bit about, or is this what you were just talking about?
That's some of the stuff I was just talking about. Restraining order clinics to help with the restraining order process. Certain survivors may get cellular, emergency cellular telephones if they don't have a phone. There's all these different services that's offered, and the Family Justice Center is open Monday through Thursday, 8 to 5. Their phone number is area code 805-652-7655. You can go to their website at vcfjc.org. They have a ton of information on there. You can even text them if you maybe have anxiety on talking to somebody on the phone, or you don't want to talk to somebody on the phone about what's going on. You can send a text message, and that phone number is area code 805-947-7981. So there's a lot of services that the Family Justice Center is offering. It's newly opened up. It's only been open for a couple months, but at some point we're going to get more and more partners in there to provide services to survivors of domestic violence and sexual abuse.
Wow. It seems pretty heavy what you do from day to day. And segueing right into the questions here, Maggie wants to know, is it scary, the work that you do, or getting into that work? I guess, like, what kind of emotional makeup or kind of demeanor do you need to have to be able to do that job?
It can be hard. Some people can have hard times emotionally. I know I had to step away for a little bit, dealing with some cases. I had a particularly tough case back in 2016 with Kimberly Lopez case. I had to step away after that case because that was a particularly hard case to deal with, and the outcome of that case. because our unit, like I said, survivors of sexual trauma, but we also deal with child death cases, and we also deal with, internet crimes against children, dealing with, online child pornography and online predators and so forth. So it's one of those things where it's not for it can be tough on those that have the kind of it's not for the faint of heart, I should say. It's something that you have to be willing to, and the rest of the people in your life have to be willing to understand that you're going to go through some tough times. There's going to be ups and there's going to be downs. But in the end, it's very rewarding to be able to get the justice. Sometimes it's not the perfect justice, but it's able to get some kind of justice for survivors.
Yeah, I feel like with any job as a public servant, you have to have a really strong support system around you with everything that comes with it. But it seems like working in your unit, having that emotional support is just super important.
It's huge.
You meant Susie asks, and you kind of touched on the internet just a minute ago. Is there a place to report sexually explicit text messages sent from a stranger?
Stranger, once again, you can contact the police department, and we can come out and we can capture those messages through our evidence capture system, evidence.com. But we can get to those messages, and it just depends on what kind of messages they are, as far as what kind of crimes we're dealing with, whether it's say annoying phone calls, or if it's some kind of pornography or revenge porn or something to that, something of that nature. But always start off the first step in this reporting process is call a dispatch, have a patrol officer come out, and they will make the determination, and they will end up calling me eventually. And we'll figure it out and go from there. But yeah, we can. There's sometimes there's things we can do. It may come down to writing search warrants for phone numbers and get cell records and figure out who's behind what, and then we just move the investigation forward.
And Susie also asks, I don't know if you know the answer to this because I don't know what it is, but please tell people about BACA if you have time. BACA.
I know.
I won't make you answer it if you can't.
I can't think of it's escaping me right now.
No worries at all. We can circle
I'm sorry.
back. It's
wow.
live.
Yeah, right.
It's live. It's live here. What and Claudia might have just joined us, but you could just recap also what support services do you offer through the Family Protection Unit? What's it generally? What support services do you connect people with the most? I guess
the most. It's generally Children and Family Services is probably the one we use the most, followed by Coalition for Family Harmony, and get people hooked up that way. Children and Family Services deals more with children, obviously, but there's a lot of programs and resources that they have that we can get them hooked up with, regardless, whether it's counseling services or so forth. The Coalition also offers free restraining order clinics, but they also offer counseling services, and on essentially every sexual assault case that we have, their counselors and advocates are in touch. We put them in touch with the victim, and offer to give them whatever services that the victim would like to utilize.
Just a couple more here. I know we're kind of out of time here, but Brigitte asks, roommates bullying and verbally abusing each other with threats. That's probably not something that your unit would take up, but the answer would be the same. First, get in touch with a patrol officer.
Exactly. Have them come out there, and at the very least, you're going to quell this or get everybody to calm down, because you guys can work through any problem. But if you guys are heated, just like in a partner violence or domestic violence, as soon as tempers get out of control, that's when the violence starts. And just if you're able to calmly talk things out, you can really work through a lot of problems that way. Um,
And Susie circles back to Baca. She says she's answering her own question. It's the Bikers Against Child Abuse. Have you ever
Thank
had
you.
any
Yes.
experience with them?
Yes. We had an officer that was really involved with them, the Children's Wall of Tears, and so forth. So yes, Bikers Against Child Abuse. Yes, I just couldn't think of what the acronym was. So thank you, Susie.
Yeah, she says they go to court with the kids so they feel safe. That's pretty cool.
No,
I
that's
haven't
cool.
heard about that. All right. Looks like we've hit that 6 o'clock mark. Is there anything else that you want to mention that we haven't touched on?
Just real quick, do's and don'ts for reporting. Don't confront the suspect if you know who the suspect is. I've already touched on don't shower or wash clothes. If you change your clothes, don't put them in the laundry basket. Put them in a paper bag. We already talked about the hospitals because they don't do the medical exams. And please do not question a child about an assault. Let the child disclose on their own, because what you end up doing is introducing additional facts and information to the child when you're talking to them, and then you start to impart what you believe happened on them, and then they start to use that as their narrative, which can hurt a potential criminal case.
Wow. It's more stuff you don't even think about. That is great. Great to hear. Great advice. And Sergeant Aaron, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
I appreciate it, Paul. Thank you for having me on.
And I know tough role in the department, and we appreciate all that you do.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. And thank you everybody out there for watching another live Q&A with the Oxnard Police Department. We'll be back with you next week. We hope to see you then. Have a great Wednesday night and a great rest of your week.
Take care.